I am welcoming to the show award-winning Canadian music therapist, multi-time author, and speaker, Jennifer Buchanan. Jennifer is going to talk with us today, well, essentially about the power of music and something most of us can relate to, playlists, as she's written a book about it for us. Jennifer, thanks for being here and welcome today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, I'm excited, and we're going to get through a couple of books. We're going to get through a bunch of discussion about music and playlists and your expertise. But let's start there. Let's start with credentials. You are a music therapist.
Yeah.
And I went, wow, I know a music therapist. What is a music therapist? So can you help us understand what that means and how do you become a music therapist?
Right. Well, and you're asking me at such a great time because March is Music Therapy Awareness Month. And so it's perfect that I'm making you aware. Um, we are we are a allied health professional group that provides a variety of services for diverse needs. So our youngest client is 2 months old. Our eldest client is 104. We walk into hospitals and long-term care and mental health centers and work in corrections and go to schools. And we use music as a very specific tool to help people boost their mood, regain skills that they may have lost due to brain injury or stroke, to help them recover some of their speech and language that, again, they may be struggling with or have lost due to injury. We will be working like counselors at the bedside, face to face, full on interaction, highly relational, using music. So, what I like to express to people is you going to a counselor or a therapist or another mental health practitioner. You could also go to a music therapist. We are in that same group.
You must have some awesome, wonderful, beautiful stories from having worked with, like you said, 2 months to 104 years old using music therapy. You must
Yeah.
have some great stories.
Some pretty remarkable stories. And probably where the books came from, that because of seeing the remarkableness of what music has the capacity to do, like, I was mentioning about working on speech, and I can remember personally working with this absolutely adorable 4-year-old, and he had sustained a head injury. He had had a horrific fall, and he had lost his speech and mobility. And it was the one of the goals that was put on by mom was, I want him to giggle again. And he had lost his giggle, all of the things. And I can remember the day where he was, we had put his car seat, because again, he was no longer mobile. We put his car seat on a table. I was just below him with my guitar. And I started using a variety of techniques where I start really, really low with my voice and I go very high with my voice. And I did it to his name. And I remember the day that he giggled again for the first time. And from there on, we started working with all his different sounds and found that speech and language again. It took time. It took many, many months, but it came back.
How rewarding. And just to be able to go home at night and have that and think about it and that you've helped somebody through the power of music. Now, you talked about you're talking a little bit about the journey here. When we get into your journey as a music therapist, it started out with something quite personal for you.
Mm,
Um, you sang and played guitar, if I understand this correctly, for your grandfather who had
yeah.
had a second stroke. He was in
Mhm,
the hospital.
mhm.
Can you tell us a little bit maybe about Grandpa and what happened in that moment and how that may have helped direct your life journey or your course in music and music therapy?
Yeah. And it was a real combo with Granny too, because um so granddad was in long-term care. He was only 62. And he would reside there for the rest of his life. And again, this was a situation where the stroke had rendered him unable to walk, unable to talk. I was just a tween, and I was learning guitar thanks to public school, public education, learning guitar. And Granny said, "Would you sing your granddad's favorite song?" Which happened to be White Cliffs of Dover by Vera Lynn, a really, really old song. And I went home and I learned it. I came back to his bedside, but and before I tell you that I sang and wonderful things happened and all that, why this is so significant is Granddad and I did not have a relationship prior to this. He was really grumpy. So when Granny asked me to sing his favorite song, I didn't know grumpy people had favorite songs. And I certainly didn't think my granddad would. And so her request had so many layers and nuances to it, and it felt really uncomfortable to go in and actually sit by his bedside and sing it, and awkward. And I was broody about it, and it was a Friday night, and I'd rather be watching television. And so then I was there, and it would be the first time I'd see Granddad cry. It would be the first time where he would reach out and actually hold my hand with his good arm. But we also had interesting things happen. We got visitors in that room. So the lady who was normally screaming down the hall started to sing. The wandering guy who normally wandered in, and Granny pulled up a chair. And so it's this motley crew of people, of like a grumpy guy and a broody teen and a screaming lady and a wandering guy and Granny, all together. And we're all singing White Cliffs of Dover by Vera Lynn. And even though I didn't know what music therapy was in the moment, I knew something was happening. And so when it was again Granny about 4 or 5 years later, we were together and watched a program out of the UK that was featuring Paul McCartney. And there was a school of music therapy, Nordoff and Robbins. And we watched this program together, and that was it. It was basically my fate was set for my career for a lifetime. I've now been practicing 32 years, so I guess it's stuck.
It's that's a phenomenal story to have, and a great memory to have. Now, you were in your tweens when you sang to your grandfather, and then you had a period of time you watched a program that kind of you started to put these pieces together of I think this is what I want to do. And that's interesting how your music pulled in all these different folks as you're playing it.
Yeah.
And they're all having probably their own experience with that moment.
100%. And
One song.
we do one song. Yeah.
So that's awesome. So you have roots in your craft, family roots in your craft, that is. Were there any other notable moments that have validated the direction that you've taken in terms of practicing music and I'm going to say this as a healing benefit, but you're touching a little bit on mental health maybe too?
Yeah. And, when I look more deeply into my own personal journey, I was just asked today, I just came from, right before I'm seeing you, from working with a group of people who are going through cancer treatment right now. And I got a question at the end of our session today that I've gotten many times, are you, do you also perform? Do you ever want to be a performer? And that has come up a lot in my lifetime. And again, even in my tweens, even though I had never heard of the term music therapy before, I felt that there was something else I wanted to do with music. So I don't know who's listening to the podcast today, but if you are you know, if you love music and you're a student and you're in school, but that whole performing thing sounds a little not quite what you want to be doing. I just want to encourage people to look at this opportunity, because to answer your question, yeah, lots of things happened. Like probably 19 things happened before I learned about the term music therapy. And I was the 133rd certified music therapist in Canada. So I was pretty fresh. And and I'm just grateful that I learned about it early, because I've also been witness to so many things. You know, like when I started, the MRI machine wasn't popular, but now that's where we're getting all our science and research to know exactly like there how music functions in the brain and how it taps into every center in the brain, you know, our mood center, our motivation center, our memory centers. And that's why it anchors so deeply in all of us, and why we can use it in a therapeutic way to help people heal and recover and improve, and in our day to day, just to feel inspired. um yeah, it's
You,
quite a
you're
remarkable resource.
you're very passionate about it, and what comes across, and I know people are listening, and we might release the video, but right now people are listening, and it's the authenticity of your passion is inspiring as I'm listening to this. And I'm glad you mentioned about the path, and a reach out to kids out there in terms of what do you want to do, and as you're thinking about what you want to do, because we get students and we get education, and sometimes teachers will use this as a teaching tool. The show, depending on the topics, I get it. We talk about different things, but I think that's one of those moments where they can do that. So thank you for doing that. There was another part too, as you were talking, that I thought about was um, the scenarios you've given us. The people who you've applied the music therapy to have been in a scenario. There's been a stroke. There's a situation that we want to overcome. But you said earlier, look, I've done this for someone who's 2 months old, 2 years old. When parents are singing to their infants, to their babies, to their kids, are they applying a form of music therapy? Like, is that a
Yeah.
stretch?
No, I mean, there's using music therapeutically, right? And we've all done that in our lifetime. I mean, being a music therapist is a profession, so that's unique. But how we use music, yeah, to transform the tone of our home.
Right.
You're bringing up, I remember when the kids were little. My kids were 15 months apart, and our house was crazy in the mornings. And you know, I'm always trying to apply the craft to my own scenarios to test it. And one of the things was starting to get up before the kids got up, which for any parent out there, you know how exhausted you are, and that's hard to do. But setting my alarm, actually getting up and just making sure, or because this was before automation, now you can set automation to do it, but start music playing in the house at a certain time to set the tone as people wake up. That was one of the greatest strategies I did for when the kids were little. So by the time we got down to breakfast, you know, people are kind of dancing a little in the kitchen, or you're humming along because you're doing everybody's favorite songs in the morning. I mean, it doesn't make it perfect. I always say that music does not eliminate every
Sure.
stress that you have, but it creates a little bit of space. It creates some margin in our lives that we need. So yeah, for everyone out there who's ever been moved by music, transformed by music, turned a song on and felt different, yeah, we've all experienced this therapeutic power of music for sure.
You have validated my mornings, because my oldest daughter says to me, Dad, we never know what we're gonna get with you in the morning. You're like a walking musical, because I sing and bring music every morning into our breakfast and things like that. So I feel better about that when hearing you say those things.
Yes.
Now, Jennifer, you've pulled all of this experience and knowledge. You've written about it. You've pulled it into you have a few books in your library that you've put together. And we're going to get to your most recent one. But the one before this one is called Tune In, a music therapy approach to life. Can we talk about that? Was that a prequel to your new one? And
Yeah.
would we benefit from reading that one first before we move into your new one?
That is a great question. I'm going to say no, you do not have to read Tune In first, but it was a bit of a prequel for me because it came at a time where I wrote Tune In when I actually thought I was coming near the end of my career as a music therapist. I thought for sure I was going to go into something else because, as wonderful as I'm making this sound, and it is wonderful, on the business side of work and getting enough work and building something for as many years as I did. It happened at the 20th year, and I was really tired. And I just thought I didn't think I had much more energy to keep having to explain what we were doing in order to get more of the work that we were doing. So I wrote Tune In as my closing book to introduce the world to what music therapy is, because I still see the value. And by the time I finished the book, I went, oh my gosh, I can never leave this profession. I love this job too much. And so it is the book to give to students or family members who are interested to know specifically what music therapy is with diverse populations. That's what Tune In is. Wellness Well Played, the latest book, The Power of a Playlist, although it mentions the one technique, it does go deeper into the power of music. It does talk about how music is, how it works in the brain, how it affects us and our feelings and our value systems. Like, it goes into a lot more than just the playlist. It is for our wellness. It is a reminder that if mental health is health, and if we're going to look after our mental health and our health, we have to put work in. Just like if you need to get some exercise, you're going to buy some new gym clothes and you're going to go out and you're going to start exercising and you're going to put the program in place because we know we need to get it. We need to do stuff. Our body needs to move. We were built for it. Music is exercise for our brain. And it is one of the best things we know, as I was saying earlier, that accesses more areas of the brain than anything else, especially music that matters to us. So this book is going to remind you how much music matters to you, even if you've forgotten about it. It's going to give you new exercises that you actually have to work at and wrestle with and struggle with. And that's where that therapeutic application is going to come in. And it's going to remind you about doing an audit of all the people in your life. Do your elders have access to music? Do your kids have access to music when they need it? And as you put all the tips and tricks together, that I'm hoping we all use music 5 or 10% more in our lives, and we all feel better because of it.
So the new one, Wellness Well Played, The Power of a Playlist, that's the book. Is there also a workbook that you
Totally. I'm all
okay.
about the workbooks. I'm a Virgo, so we like workbooks and checklists.
So do you buy the workbook separately?
Yeah,
Okay. And
I think it's good to read the book and do the workbook alongside it. Yeah.
so you mentioned you're asking questions and because I was going to say, what do I expect when I pick this book up? What would we expect? If I'm reading it and it's got exercises, the workbook would help me with the exercise. Okay, got it.
That's
So I
right.
wanted to make sure everybody understood there's these two parts. You could read it, and then there's also a really cool workbook that goes with it, right?
Yes.
Um, in the intro pages of your new book, you write, we are witnessing a major social change throughout the world. People seem to have awakened to a desire to revisit what they truly value. In my circle, I have noticed how people are re-examining the power of music in times of change. Um, are you saying that society is using music differently right now, as a tool, as a means to overcome whatever situation they may be in, and how so? In
Yeah.
your observations, how so?
Yeah, and so this was really coming into fruition at the beginning of COVID. So in the clinical space with clients, um, they were going through times where it was even harder. Like all their transitions and things they were going through in the hospitals and long-term care, like it was even harder. So those uncertain times were really uncertain for them. And music brought a sense of certainty. It That familiar music reminded them at some level, I'm still me and I'm still okay. Amongst my friends, I was finding exactly the same thing. Like I have never known so many people um, buying record players again, and we're going for vinyl, and we're wanting the tactile experience once again. And just naturally talking about playlists. Oh yeah, I put together my get rid of my anxiety playlist, and they're putting them together. So yeah, I think there's a resurgence. And, I was just looking, I'm always looking at Amazon to go, how good's my book doing? And I went there and I went, oh my gosh, there's like 3 new books on the science of music and what music is doing. So, I ordered those because, you want to keep up on what's happening. But I think it is becoming popular. I think we're wanting to know more about it. What I want to remind people, though, is it's not just reading about it or learning about it. And yes, I want you to buy the book and do the workbook, but I want to remind everybody, keep going out to live music. Like if you haven't been out for a while and you haven't gone somewhere and actually listened to someone where you felt something, you know, yeah, let's do that too.
So you brought up the playlist and some experiences. What are we actually doing when we're creating the playlist? I mean, yes, I've got different playlists, and I'm gonna put, the songs I like in the playlist. But is there something else I'm doing when I'm creating that playlist? And does your book help guide us when it comes to that something else?
So many. So there's so many different playlists that we can put together. How about um I will share one of my favorites, and like just quickly, but going through it in the book, it will really guide you through all the different steps. But essentially, I have people use a graph. So there's a graph you will see in the book, and on the y-axis, at the top of the y is your best self. So you can, however you're going to define that. And I take you through the book on how do you define what your best self is. And then at the bottom is your worst self. Like, how would you describe your worst self? And, like some people that's going to be, like just not wanting to get out of bed in the morning, feeling completely overwhelmed, and your most best self might be highly productive and focused and joyful and all the things. So you've got this graph on the Y, and then down on the X axis, you've got time of day. And all I want people to think about is just a typical time, a typical day that you would have, a Wednesday, whatever day you want to think about. And as you go through your day, from the moment you wake up till you go to bed at night, how would you plot your graph? Would you be like, are you like me where you're a morning person? I bounce out of bed and I'm able to go right up to the top to my best self. I've got a nice plummet around, dinner time. And then I go up, I bounce a bit again at night. So, I can see my graph in my head. Where in that day would you like to feel 5% different. And I say different instead of better because some people are really ramped up high and feel great at night, but they actually wish they didn't feel quite so ramped up because they're having a hard time going to sleep. So you pick where you want to feel 5% different. And then the book takes you through what feeling do you need to feel different. Whatever word you come up with, one word is the name of that particular playlist for that particular time of day. And for you to test it. And it's only a 3 to 5 song playlist. Like I've got some playlists in there that are really uber long and that you're going to work on for a long time for the rest of your life. But some are very short and very specific. And as easy as that might sound, it isn't that easy. So it's just one of the activities that you can go through. So when you hit my 4 o'clock slump, I'm going to put on a very specific 3 to 5 songs. Mine is Nurture. I hate it at dinner time when I'm in a low and someone says, "What's for supper?" I hate demands on me when I'm low. So I want to feel love. So you put on your headphones and you listen to your love. Wow. You know, I was going to say CD. That's how old I am now.
It's okay. There might be a CD player over there on my desk. So, and one another one, anyways. I love what you're saying. It's so deliberate, you know. And I'm thinking back. Yeah, I used to make playlists all the time. I used to record them on my cassette recorder. There's dating yourself years and years and years and years ago, right? But it's so deliberate what you're doing, and it sounds like the book takes us through the exercise to execute that deliberate and to have it apply. Let me ask this: Does my favorite song belong on every playlist I make?
No,
No?
It can't because it belongs on your favorite playlist one for sure. And maybe it will transcend. But if we're like, for example, your favorite song may not be one that calms you or soothes you. It might not, right?
Okay. Fair. Yeah.
So, and you know, it's interesting because there's research out there that says 20 minutes of listening to music that deeply soothes you equals 10 milligrams of Valium.
Wow.
So that music might not be like my favorite song actually does fit on that playlist, but it doesn't fit on my motivation playlist for when I am trying to get in my 20-minute run. It doesn't fit there.
And I was going to ask about the workout, because everybody says, "Oh, I need some music." So when you're building the playlist, the working out, the running, the lifting the weights, and we could say this about anything, right?
Yeah.
What's actually happening? Like when we're listening to those specific songs, what's happening to us? Like, is it like you talked about the highs and lows? I guess you can put the wrong song on those types of playlists too, where you don't have energy.
Yeah, and you feel it, right? Like I also go to personal training and I talk a lot with the coaches about this. I go twice a week and we talk about this a lot about what tempo is good. And this is even unique. This is where that personal piece comes. So when I was just mentioning running and I almost started laughing when I was saying running because it's been a while since I've gone out for a run. I'm the worst runner ever. And by worst, I mean like I'm always last. Like I go to those groups and I'm always last. So I go, oh, I want to get as much advantage as possible. So I did what they say, 120 beats per minute, put it on, get all my music. I was ready to go. I got out there 1 minute in, I'm exhausted. Like I'm exhausted because that's too fast for me. So I need to listen to Evanescence, big orchestral music that can literally lift me and help me run. And I'll still come in last, but I'm going to feel better.
Yes, she's going to feel better. No, you know what? That's really insightful. And you also had me thinking, because you talked about students earlier, Jennifer. You know, and I'm thinking university, college, I guess elementary too, but university, college, the importance of having a study playlist
Yeah.
where if they do go through your book and they do the exercises
Mhm.
and you
Yeah.
know, in between those exams, in between
Mm,
studying, because I
totally.
always said to say to my kids, if you're studying for exams or tests, don't go watch TV, listen to music in between. Because I
Mm.
think I'm not a therapist. I have
Mhm.
nothing to
Mhm.
validate. I just knew from my own
Yeah,
old
yeah.
experiences, listening to music always made me feel like the brain was still kind of going. It was a break, but
Yeah, yeah.
it kept me thinking. And so going back to studying was real easy because I was already thinking.
Love that.
Um, but maybe it would benefit them, no, like to have that type of list.
Again, it's a little bit preference here because you also know. So I like how actually you just phrase this in between the
Right.
studying. So using it as the brain interrupt, like actually doing some form of cognitive interrupt that they're having, but that still keeps the brain active, but in accessing new areas of the brain because it's not, people say we only engage the brain 10% of the brain. That's actually not true. We engage 10% of the brain at one time. We can bounce around and use a lot of areas of the brain, just not all at the same time. So by using music, we're going to bounce to another area of the brain, still keep at some cognitive load, and then be able to come back and use energetically that cognitive action, that's still that activated state, onto the homework side. So I love that you said that. Some people do listen to music, especially I'm finding electronic music, like something that has a really, really repetitive beat while they're um, doing their work. And some people are using something called binaural beats, which is when it's alternating left and right side. And that seems to keep them calm, but also focused. So I myself work best when I listen to music in between the work, exactly as you're
Right.
saying. I can't do it simultaneously, but I have worked with people who find another way to really make it work. So there is some preferential
Is
makeup there.
the and you talked about the beat.
Hmm.
Is the type of music or the beat important based on the activity?
Oh, that's so good, right? Like, is groove important? Um, I guess it depends on the scenario I'd like to say yes to all of this, but I don't know if we've got enough evidence to know that there's any standardization with it. What I do know are people with Parkinson's, when they get in that frozen state, and if there's the right music at the right tempo, they actually will walk as if they don't have Parkinson's. And I've seen it repeatedly, and they don't get into that frozen state. So the tempo is very, very significant. The groove, the connection to the groove is very significant. I have seen people go from not tapping a toe to tapping a toe by groove, for sure. um Tempo really seems to be a major player on stress. They recommend around that 60 to 70 beats per moment per minute when you're wanting to come down and have a true relaxation. But then I've worked with some teens going, oh my gosh, that just causes me all sorts of anxiety. I need something like at about 80 to 100. And so why, right? So why I love being a music therapist is my job isn't to convince anybody on what's the right thing. It's to find the right thing for that person. And that's why this job is so curious and interesting.
You are custom. You customize it.
We
Yeah,
customize.
you customize. Look, so we've been talking a lot about your books, but you don't just write these cool books and helpful books. You do public speaking engagements as well. For anybody who's listening, because sometimes corporate listens to us as well. Who like tell us about who the ideal customer is for your engagements, and then I know you have a website, Jennifer. I'm looking over there because on my other screen it's got your beautiful website, jenniferbuchanan.ca. Is that the way they go about contacting you if they're interested? And
Yeah,
who is
that
the
would
ideal
be
customer?
great. Yeah, that would be great. The groups, I mean, they always say that you're supposed to pick an audience, right? And it's so tough when you're talking about music that affects all of us.
Mm.
I love speaking to frontline workers who are totally stressed out and remind them on how music can be a resource for them, their day to day. I love talking to corporate teams who just have not talked about music with one another ever, and then realize this is a way that we can build team culture and connect together and learn about one another in a whole new way, and then all of a sudden feel creative and productive. So I love that piece. I love speaking uh gosh, I mean, I love talking to teachers, there's just so many different groups, but it's conferences, when we come together, and we want to learn some new tools and resources. Mental health takes a lot of ingredients, and music's one of them.
So you can go into a corporate office, you can go into schools.
Yeah.
Really, it's anyone who's interested in leveraging the technique or understanding more about it, you can do those engagements. And we
Totally.
go through jenniferbuchanan.ca. There's a contact form, I think, there where they can do that as well, right?
It's great.
Awesome. Jennifer, I this is so cool. I've enjoyed talking to you so much. I think all the information you provided, folks are just going to enjoy it and eat it up. I thank you for coming onto the show and giving us these insights. And before I let you go, was there anything else that you wanted to touch on? So I say this to everybody. This is my broken record part where I go, is there anything you'd like to leave us with? Because I always worry that I've asked all these selfish questions of things I want to know that I think people might want to hear, but maybe there's something else. So is there anything else that you'd like to leave us with?
I mentioned earlier that what I'm hoping is everyone just uses music 5% more. I like reminding people that a song is never just a song and a playlist is never just a playlist. A song is an incredibly meaningful moment to you that's meant to be remembered. And a playlist is represents your amazing journey that you're looking at for something about yourself or to share with others. And I am just really grateful to have had this conversation with you. And now you're a part of this journey with me, and I'm just delighted about it.
We are all on this journey with award-winning Canadian music therapist, multi-time author, and speaker Jennifer Buchanan. I will have all of Jennifer's contact information and links to her books in the podcast notes. You can check her website out on jenniferbuchanan.ca and get going on your wellness well played journey right now. Jennifer, thank you so much and take care.
You too. Thank you.